asked me to update you on the hospital at the meetings. There haven't been any significant changes. Did everyone get the email that I sent out after the last meeting? What's happening right now is the hospital has applied to MDE, revising the plan, reducing it to 4 wells instead of 6, and leaving the recovery well operating the entire time. What that means is that the possibility of anything moving downstream during that process is hydraulically slim to none. We know that that cone that they maintain at the hospital has kept stuff from moving off site. So with that pump operating, there's no worry that when they put the IV-Sol in during this test pilot, that any of it is going to move off-site. One thing that I had asked that didn't go over real well, and at this point doesn't matter, they were going to do the static, put it in, let it sit, and then pull it back out the next day. I said, well, if you're going to do that, let's dye the water. Take some dyed water before you put any chemical in it, and put it in each one of the wells, and see what we get out the next day. Well, since the recovery well is going to be running and the water is going to be moving constantly now, it doesn't really matter how that test would come out. So we're still waiting to hear a response from MDE and the hospital on whether that revised plan is accepted or not, or exactly what the revised plan is going to look like, because although we did have some input into it, we did not see that plan in its entirety before it was submitted to MDE. So we won't know what's in it until MDE sends back their response to it, approving or denying it. At that point, the hospital should be getting a hold of us because they have given us a commitment not to proceed unless we were on board. And that's where we're at right now, and that's all I have.
Just out of curiosity, why don't we get to see the report before it's submitted? We just don't think it's necessary to do that?
What we'd asked for was to have some input and to modify the original plan.
Right, now I understand that, and they, hopefully they took some of that information and put it in the plan.
Now what we got back, is that we got with our consultant and we did up a letter and we sent it to the hospital, and the guy gave us a response to our consultant that said, here's what we're incorporating into the revised plan. When I say we don't know what the revised plan is, we can assume that the only thing that changed in that revised plan are the things that we suggested. But we won't know that for a fact until we actually...
So you don't know whether to put 1 or all 10 or whatever you had in there?
We know the ones that they did put in included reducing from 6 wells to 4 wells, and leaving the recovery well in operation during that entire pilot test. And there are no plans right now to shut off that recovery well at any point. So it's running now. It will be running when they do the IV-Sol injections, and there is no plan to shut it off. Now, as I see it, that would conclude the pilot study. They're going to put in the IV-Sol. Their pump's going to continue running. They're going to get out the IV-Sol through that recovery well, in addition to whatever oil that IV-Sol should free up. If the pilot test is done at that point, then the discussion becomes, what do we do with the entire site? And that's where things get a lot more complicated.
And if MDE approves the plan, when do you anticipate this test taking place?
They're actually shooting for the end of July, August, I believe.
Okay.
Because of the groundwater table, they feel that that would be best.
It's low by then, right?
Well, by then, I believe it's actually higher. Because, remember, a lot of the groundwater is actually coming from 50, 100, 200 miles away. It takes that long for it to seep through the soils. And a lot of it is coming from over towards the Alleghenies. Now, on the Aquia aquifer, it has a recharge zone that goes on the other side of the bay. So there's a large area there where we're collecting it in.
Except if we have a hurricane, maybe.
Well, actually, it doesn't change the saturation rate of the aquifer, even if you have hurricane after hurricane, because water can only soak into the ground at a given rate. So when you have these recharge zones, one thing that will change that is if you have a saturated pond with sand at the bottom that feeds directly into an aquifer, then you'll see a larger recharge rate. But that usually runs off to an intermittent stream or some type of surface water. Because the groundwater hydraulics don't allow it to take but so much either. So even those ponds will overflow during a heavy rain.